Ralph will be joining us shortly. Chris is excused tonight. She cannot join us this evening. So the only thing I would say is if we lose somebody, we'll have to wait until we get a quorum again. But Ralph will be in person, so we should be fine. So thank you all for joining us for the Readfield Select Board meeting of January 11th. We have a number of guests here as well, and I would just ask guests when the appropriate time comes that you may be speaking, just simply introduce yourself, because sometimes I just see some sort of numbers or whatever. So thank you for being here. The first order of business is the minutes for the Select Board meeting of December 14th, 2020. And by the way, this is the first meeting of the new year. Do I have a motion regarding the minutes?
I'll make a motion. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Oh, good. I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented for December 14th, 2020 as presented.
Thank you for moving and seconding the minutes. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, I have to call a roll. That's the way we do this. Dennis?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
Bruce? And again, if you haven't joined us before on virtual meetings, we're supposed to call a roll.
Bruce, could you just say if you were yay or nay, please?
I'm a yay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Thank you. And do keep me on that. For communications, we're going to skip warrants until Ralph is here because he's actually the person who did the warrants this time. So we'll move on to Select Board communications. Do any members of the Select Board have anything they would like to share?
Very briefly, I'd just like to say that I've seen the new LED street lights in town and they look fantastic. And they're going to cost us a whole lot less money. So bravo.
Great. Anybody else? Dennis, you all set? And I'm all set too, and we'll give Ralph an opportunity, obviously. Town staff reports. The floor is yours, Eric.
All right, thank you. I've just got a brief town manager's report that I'll run through.
And the treasurer's report would be next meeting then?
That'll be next meeting, yeah.
Okay, fine. Yep. Thank you.
With respect to maintenance and infrastructure, winter road maintenance has been ongoing for about 2 months now. We've been lucky we haven't had the really heavy snows or severe cold like we've had in years past, and we actually haven't had that many ice events either. So we're doing okay. I hope that continues. But I just want to remind folks that we are actively plowing, and we have had some mailbox damage the last couple of storms, even though they were light storms. And part of that, not all of it, but part of it is that mailboxes sometimes aren't set properly to the right height or the right setback from the road. And I just want to remind folks that those mailboxes, if they're not set to the guidelines that are adopted by the town of Readfield, are unsafe, and they may not be replaced if they're damaged during plowing. So just a reminder to measure when you install your mailboxes and make sure that it's the proper setback from the road edge and also the proper height. So,
and Eric, where would they find those?
Those are available on the town website. If you go to the road commissioner or the road committee pages, they both have links there. So,
please continue. I'm sorry I interrupted Dennis. Go ahead.
Me or Dennis?
You.
Okay.
Same question. We're all set.
All right, great. Thank you both. Okay, so we are keeping the beach parking lot open this year. This is something new for us. We're trying to encourage winter recreation. It's a great spot for ice fishing. It's actually a great spot to go with your kids because there's lots of perch and pickerel and some easy catching. So we're trying to do that. So the only request we have is to not go down the hill if you don't think you can get back up it, and also to take out any trash you bring in with you. But we're looking forward to seeing more activity by leaving that parking lot open so people can ice skate or whatever they choose to do down there. And then the old town pickup truck is for sale. We have bids coming in, and bids are due next week. I think Thursday at like noon is the deadline, but that's also available on the town website. We have a $1,000 minimum bid, so keep that in mind, but we're looking forward to move that old truck and recoup some of the cost. Moving on to transfer station, we are actively pursuing food scrap waste,
Hey, Keith.
food scrap recycling and composting. This is the first time we've been able to really have a positive and possibility of doing this. We've been working on it for a couple of years, but this time we have staff lined up and on board. We have some support from other agencies, including KV-COG, and we're actually working with the University of Maine Mitchell Center to do a little bit of more analytical work. So we're trying to put things together to actually make this a successful program. We expect that we will have food composting on site at the transfer station this spring, and support for backyard composting also at the same time, because those two things can work together quite well. And I want to thank Catherine for her role in that and working with the Solid Waste Committee to keep that alive. It's something we've been really working on. Safety bollards were installed at the maintenance building, and that's the building that's right adjacent to all the parking area. So we have some additional security there to keep damage from happening to the building, which we've had in the past. The backhoe, Anna identified an issue with some of the rims on the backhoe. I guess they had not been properly installed when we had the tires filled. And so those have been replaced. They were under warranty. So thanks to her diligence and keeping an eye on things, we caught that problem and it was corrected. So now we have new rims on the backhoe. The last item I have for transfer station is, again, to remind people that we do accept and welcome bottles and cans at the transfer station. All the money that comes in from returning those goes towards our heating assistance fund. So we definitely encourage folks to bring those in if they have some. Administration and personnel, the town office remains open by appointment only, and that's a situation that I expect is going to continue for the next couple months. We had started just a month or so ago, 6 weeks ago, going back to that model, but realistically, I just want people to know that we're probably not going to be making a change there, at least for a month or two. So please, if you call the town office, we'll try to pick up. If we don't, just leave a message. It's better to leave a message than call 3 or 4 times. So I just encourage people to do that. We are hiring or starting the hiring process again for summer grounds maintenance. And I guess I should say it's really grounds maintenance seasonally. It's a great summer job, but we start as soon as the snow melts. So we're looking to get somebody on board in April this year, as we have in years past. And so if you have an interest or you know someone who might be interested, please send them my way, and we'll be happy to talk and interview and do all of that. The last item I have is that the town office will be closed for the Martin Luther King Day holiday on Monday, January 18th. And that's my report. I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions from board members for Eric? Okay, seeing none, I'll go to Ralph. Thank you for joining us. If you had anything that you wanted to say in select board communications, please do, and then we'll go right back to warrants, which I believe you had.
No, I apologize for the technical snafu, but once again, I've been bitten.
Okay. Did you review the warrants, Ralph?
I can do 27A, 27, and 28. I think that's when my duty kicked in.
25 and 26 were probably Chris, right?
I believe so.
Okay. I will handle 25 and 26, which is a warrant in the total of $67,636.14. 51 and some odd change of that was for various vendors, and the rest was account payroll. 4 members of the board signed that warrant, so it was reviewed by Chris. looking at it very quickly, there was a $5,000 payment for Affinity LED light, and that relates to the lights that were mentioned a little bit earlier. The Maine Municipal Association, I believe that's our dues or a portion of our dues. Do you know if that's once or twice a year or what, Eric?
That's multiple times a year, so that's probably either semi-annual or quarterly. It depends on the type of. We have so many
Service that-
accounts with MMA. Yeah, it's
Okay.
either semi-annual or quarterly.
Okay. And mechanical services, because I didn't personally look into the folders and Chris did, do you recall what the Mechanical Services Inc. was for?
Yes, that was for additional and hopefully final repairs to the heating zones and system at the town office here. We actually do have the heat under control after a few winters of having it either be 75 or 65. So we're it's finally in order.
Okay, so that everything else looks customary and ordinary to me, but we can answer any questions after I make a motion that we approve warrants 25 and 26 in the amount of $67,636.14. Do I have a second, please?
I second it.
It's been seconded. Is there discussion on warrants 25 and 26? Seeing none, we'll proceed with the roll call. Dennis?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
Bruce is a yes, too. Thank you. We'll move on now, Ralph, to yours, 27 and 28, please.
First, we have 27A in the amount of $1,954.81, which was a check to the treasurer of the state of Maine. Warrant 27 is the big one, $356,731.22. The highlights, 302-90902 to RSU 38. A progress payment to John Cushing for our winter snow removal of $28,521.66. We had another consultant payment for our broadband initiative of $2,975. Another fairly large component, $9,412.78 for health insurance. And then we had some repairs which are attributed to, I guess, the John Deere tractor. It needed a new clutch, and that amount is $3,603.24. And then warrant 28 was strictly salary, as usual, $15,765.41. I don't have an aggregate total, so would you like to do them individually, or?
Yes, I have 27 and 28, and the total of 372,496.63. So I do have that total if you want to move that.
I would move that then. Yeah.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to approve warrants 27 and 28 in the amount of $372,496.63. Is there any discussion or questions?
Yes.
Catherine, please.
I think I was the second one in to sign, and I don't know, so Eric, this question is for you, but there was no bill in there at all for Casco Bay Advisors. Do you know if it's been put in the folder since it was first presented to us?
I don't have that rate with me. I can check. I'll certainly let you know, and I'll make sure that it's in there if it wasn't initially.
I was just interested in what the breakdown was and wanted it to be there. So thank you.
Yeah, the breakdown as far as the labor or.
Right. I think he had decided he would bill us hourly rather than a fixed rate. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is. So I'll get you that information.
Great. Thank you. All set.
Great. Then if there are no other questions, I'll proceed with a roll. Dennis?
Yes.
Ralph?
Yes.
Catherine?
Yes.
And Bruce is a yes. We'll move on to boards, committees, commissions, departments. We do not have any minutes in this particular packet. But Romaine Turing has joined us from the Age Friendly Committee, and I think we're talking about a small grant, although Romaine, I will give you the floor if you also want to update us to any activities that Age Friendly is involved in. So the floor is yours.
Thank you. For those of you who don't know me, my name's Romaine Turin, and I live here in Readfield on the old Kents Hill Road, and I chair the Age Friendly Committee, which is a committee of the town. Right off, I need to apologize for the lateness of this information to you. It became available, the grant opportunity became available in November, and it was just hard to get motivated to do much. In November, and December kind of flew by, and it really nagged at me that this money was available, and I just thought we really needed to pursue it. So over the weekend I got going on it, and it's due on Friday. So I apologize for that, and I take full responsibility. But it's a Maine Community Foundation mini grant for lifelong communities. It's called Lifelong Communities Mini Grant. And they're giving towns up to $2,500. It's a very small amount, but I emailed with Jerry Bly, and we got together on Sunday to try to come up with ideas, and then we pulled Greg Durgan in. And what we would propose, very simply for the town to apply, is to buy a bench that would sit atop of Suicide Hill, or the hill at Maranacook, overlooking on the trail system, overlooking Maranacook. I just think that I continue to think it's a super spot for a bench for people who choose to take a walk up the hill, or just want to take some time and look out over the lake or over the open space. It's a beautiful spot. And it would be nice to have a bench there. And given the distance from the center of the fairgrounds, I think it needs to be a pretty substantial bench so that it doesn't have to be moved in and out and back and forth. So once it's set up, it's there. So we budgeted $500 for that. And the rest of the funding would go really towards improving the quality of the trails with more bluestone. Because some of the bluestone has been worn through to the vinyl underneath. And one of the criteria of the grant is implementing projects that will improve the quality of life for older community members. And I think we can make a very strong argument that there's been an increase in usage of the trails since March, and having them be ADA compliant and of sound quality is very important to the well-being of all residents in Readfield. So I guess that's very briefly, it's very simple, but I think I fortunately you were meeting tonight, and I guess I would just ask you to consider moving forward on the grant application.
And what we would do in course of business is to just approve the town moving forward on this. And I did speak with Eric very briefly this afternoon. So there's no town match or anything in this. This is a pure grant. Yeah. Do any board members have questions or comments for Romaine?
Just thank you for taking this on as another one of the duties of being on the committee. I think it sounds like a fabulous idea. Always improving the trail, making it safer and easier for people is wonderful. So thank you.
And I will say, I do know, just informally, not me, but there's a group of women who are older who meet every day and walk those trails with masks. And so it's an incredible resource for this community, especially during the pandemic, because it does give an opportunity for people to socialize, which is critical.
Yeah, and I think also that the improvements that we make and the use that has occurred is probably going to continue, because it was, interestingly enough, this gave people an introduction to the trail system, this entire situation. So I would take a motion from the floor, please.
I'll make a motion to approve the town pursuing the AARP grant as presented by Romaine this evening.
It's
I
to the,
second that.
thank you, but it's to the Maine Community Foundation. I'm sorry, I probably wasn't clear about that.
So that,
Okay.
I'll see that as so noted and edited. How's that sound, Catherine?
Perfect. I meant to say Maine Community Foundation.
Okay, well, that's what I heard on my end. Okay, great. So we have the motion on the floor. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll proceed with the roll. Dennis,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Catherine,
Yes.
Bruce is a yes. Thank you so much, Romaine. You're
Thank
welcome to stay as long as you would like.
Thank you. And again, my apologies for the.
No apology necessary.
None needed.
We'll move, thank you. We'll move on to appointments, reappointments, and resignations. Sadly, we have the resignation of Deb Doughton from the Cemetery Committee. I just want to speak very highly of Deb. She's been a very integral part of much of the cemetery improvements we've done over the years. And so I'm going to go ahead from the chair and make the motion to accept her resignation from the Cemetery Committee, and with extreme regret.
I'll second.
And moved and seconded to consider that resignation. Is there any further comment on it? Seeing none, Dennis Price,
Yes.
Ralph Eno,
Yes.
Catherine Woodsum,
Yes.
and Bruce Burgoyne is a yes. We'll move on to old business now, which we have one update discussing a local COVID-19 situation and any necessary action. And I believe Eric will be giving us that update. And I don't think Lee is here, but a good part of that does involve where we stand with the fire department and how they have some protocols that they've established that I've seen. They're in the packet. They're very good. Go ahead, Eric, please.
All right, thanks, Bruce. And as I noted, we are continuing with our standard course of protocol at this point, precautions. The town office does remain by appointment only. The transfer station, even though it's an open area, is following the state directive from the governor, and masks are required there. So we're really very much in the status quo, at least for the past 6 weeks, as I mentioned. Watching some of the numbers come in over the past couple of weeks with Dr. Shah and his experts that he works with, it has been alarming, I guess is the way to put it. And so we are continuing to take this very seriously. People are undoubtedly fatigued by all of this, but we at the town office and in the town generally are continuing to try to be diligent where we can, how we can, and just take it one day at a time and continue to maintain those protocols and that safety for the residents and for the staff. So we're going to continue to have a little bit of inconvenience, but we think it's better than the alternative. And so I just wanted to let everybody know that we're tired. We're all fairly well exhausted from the just the constant nature of all of this, but people are taking it seriously and are being very careful. And I thank the residents for their part in doing this as well, despite all of the 9 months of this so far. So. The fire department is doing their part as well and taking a lead really in developing some protocols. First, they came forward with a vaccination, basically a declination form that we reviewed with town council to make sure that we were being fair and offering proper protections for the folks that might be accepting the vaccine and those that might decline it, and for the town as well. So they did put that together, and that's already in use, I guess is the way to put it. Nobody has been vaccinated yet, but we do expect that to happen late this month, if not early next, depending on how 1A rolls out with the vaccination schedule. It is behind, and it's behind by 2 or 3 weeks now maybe more. But the state is slowly catching up with the capacity to actually roll through the vaccines that they are getting about as quickly as they come in. So for a while there was a backlog. They had stuff building up, but now they're doing 4,000 or 5,000 vaccinations a day, and we expect that our fire department personnel will be able to get vaccinated promptly. It is worth noting that the Winthrop ambulance service that provides EMS service for us, they have been vaccinated, at least those that have are on the front, in the ambulances and all of that. Not everybody in every department gets vaccinated in this first wave, but the ones that are showing up to offer aid have been and are required to be. Much like with the fire department, in order to participate in activities, this policy that's included in the packet, which is the second piece of this vaccination documentation, this describes how and when and what the requirements are for vaccination if people want to participate in the fire department, and what activities they can do and what they can't do. So this basically is a great model for the town of Readfield, for staff. We don't have anything in place yet because I don't believe we'll be vaccinated as public officials or anything like that for several months more. I'd say probably 2 or 3 anyway. But there will come a time when we need to have a policy like this in effect for municipal employees that are providing these public services. So I just wanted to thank Lee for his work in putting this stuff together. He again has been a great partner and a great leader in this pandemic, and just really doing a great job making sure that our volunteers are safe and that the public stays safe as well. So,
Okay, I want to go ahead and just mention to the public that the more contagious and virulent, if you will, strain has been tested and found in Connecticut. So we know how I-95 operates. So I expect if it's not in southern Maine already, it's on its way. I want to thank town employees in particular. This isn't easy for them. It may seem that they're able to modulate their work differently, but that's not really how they want to interact with the public. This creates a little bit of a screen. And finally, I would say the fire department, they have been so focused on making sure that they can be responsive to the town. And so I really commend Lee and his team as well. Are there any other board members that had questions or wanted to make a comment on this particular item of business?
Thanks for sharing.
Thank you. And so in my haste of moving down through the list, I did not welcome the public for public communication. And Catherine, shame on you. You usually catch me on that when I skip an item. So are there any members of the public that are here to address the select board or have a question for the select board and would like to ask a question? If there are, we don't bite. All you have to do is introduce yourself. Okay, seeing none at this time, we'll move on. The next item of business is a consent agreement for property on map 120 lot 037. And I'll turn over the floor to both Eric and Cliff, I believe.
Well, I'll just let Cliff take this. This has been something that he's been working on. And again, Cliff is our interim code officer, but he's done an exceptional job bringing things together and being a great representative and offering as much support as he possibly can to the public. So he's done a great job, and I really do want to thank him. He's really saved our ability to provide this service to the public in a good way, and he's actually brought the level of what we do up in his short month here, and I am hoping we can relieve him of that because he needs to get back to retirement. But I just want to thank Cliff before I turn it over to him to talk about the consent agreement.
Cliff, the floor is yours.
Here I am again. You have in your packet a proposed consent agreement for land use violation agreement being between the town and property owners Ellen and Joyce Hill of 804 Main Street. They are here this evening. I don't know if you can see them, but if you have questions, they are here. It's a land use violation. I ran across doing an internal plumbing inspection a couple of weeks ago. It involves setback violations to a tributary stream of Cook Lake and a property line, which are one of the same. The project is nearing completion. It's pretty much already built, and it appears that this exists as a result of some unfortunate errors on both the part of the property owners and the part of the town. The application was not clear on the setbacks, what the proposed building would be, and the town apparently did not do a site visit to catch the errors, and the permit was issued to the Hills based on just the paperwork. I don't think there was any intent on either party to circumvent the rules or regulations. And so I'm not proposing any fines of any kind. The consent agreement does include a provision that they get a stormwater plan, manage the stormwater that's going right into the stream. And we all met out there several days ago with a representative from the Kennebec County Soil and Water Conservation District, and the plan is in the process of being prepared right now. So what I'm asking tonight is if you would approve the consent agreement and authorize the town manager to sign it on behalf of the town.
Thank you, Cliff. I did read through the consent agreement line by line, and unless someone else wants to make a motion, I can move to this. Catherine, please.
Cliff, I just want to ask you a question, if I may. I'm not sure that I understood what you said, and I did read the whole thing through. I think this was a case of something being overlooked possibly by the property owner as well as by the town employee. So it's really kind of a no-fault situation. Would that be a correct read?
That's right. That's correct.
Okay. And as I was reading through this, there is a restriction on future building to enclose the deck beyond what was already permitted. So there can be an enclosure over the deck, but not over the entire deck?
That's correct. Part of the deck is 3/9 open, and part of it was proposed on the application to be a 3-season porch, which has already been essentially constructed.
Okay. And so whatever, it just seemed a little bit open-ended, and I just want to make sure that this is a normal way that we do this with the, I can't even remember what the words are now, but for the, I'll find it here. For the setback or for the preventing anything going in via erosion into the stream or the brook.
Stormwater plan.
Right. So if this stormwater plan were to come out and it's going to be $10,000, is the property owner going to be held to having to do that? Or is this something that we've already looked at and it's a reasonable cost, reasonable solution?
We talked about what the stormwater plan would consist of when we were out there the other day. I don't think it's going to be a $10,000 project. It's going to involve installing a guttering system around the house, which will drain into a dry well of sorts, swale in the ground, and riprap, actually two separate swales, each receiving one side of the building where the stormwater will then infiltrate into the ground.
So it's
rather than
bas-
the stream.
So it's basically guttering the house and then a little land work to get the water to run away where it needs to be.
Right. That's
Okay.
correct.
I feel much more comfortable now. It just seemed a little open-ended to me, so thank you.
Okay.
If no one else has any questions or comments, I'm happy to make a motion, Bruce.
Go ahead and make the motion and I'll just have one question.
Let me see who's going to sign this. So,
It'll be the town manager.
right. I would like the select board to approve the consent agreement in the packet tonight between Alan and Joyce Hill of Readfield and the town of Readfield, and authorize the town manager to sign.
Is there a second?
I second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Yeah, I'll just have a question, and I just wanted to also say to Alan and Joyce, thank you for being here. I appreciate you being here and working with the town to come up with this consent agreement so that we could protect that stream and do what we need to do. So I do appreciate you being here. And finally, just for public information, Cliff, we do inspect that after it's done, right?
That's for sure, yes.
Yeah, so, you know, that's part of the whole process. So we have the motion on the floor. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Dennis Price,
Yes.
Ralph Eno,
Yes,
Catherine Woodsum,
Yes.
Bruce Burgoyne is a yes. Thank you, Cliff, and Alan and Joyce Hill for being here. You're welcome to stay, as I always say, but you don't need to, obviously. Thank you. Sometimes there's pie in the oven or something like that. 21067, considering the location and installation of 4 new streetlights. In your packet are the locations of the additional streetlights. I'm going to ask Eric to speak to this. The poll numbers are there, and I think it's pretty straightforward. Eric, any comment on this? These were looked at by he just dropped out.
Here he is.
Hi, Eric.
Hi, Bruce.
And consulting on these, we also talked with, I believe, the fire department. Is that correct?
We did. So that was going to be my only comment.
I'm sorry.
We talked. You stole my thunder, Bruce. No, we talked with the select board about this following the language in the town meeting. We were approved for up to 4 new lights. I went around with Anna. We looked at the intersections, probably a half dozen or probably closer to a dozen. We also looked at a list that Catherine had provided and other suggestions that came from members of the public, and also coordinated with Lee on this. And so he reviewed the list that we came up with and picked his top priorities. And so these are the 4 that we think are the most important. I'd like to continue this program in the future, and I'm not sure. Streetlights are a little bit tricky because of the fact that they do require pole, rental, and so there's a cost and a contract that's associated with them. But I think that if we can add several next year, we might be able to continue to improve safety. These 4 are going to be a great step forward, and the wattages are the only thing that is not absolutely certain at this point. I'm working with Affinity and CMP to get the appropriate wattage. Again, these are the LED wattage, not the actual lumen output of these lights. So even though 18 watts with an LED light, that's actually quite a bright light. That's my starting point. I think that we will adjust some of those up to a higher wattage, maybe 30, maybe even some of them more. But that's the one thing that's outstanding. So what I'm looking for from the board tonight is a general agreement that this is where we would like to go, and permission to finalize this agreement with CMP.
Great. Are there any questions, or does somebody want to put a motion on the floor for discussion?
Bruce, one quick question.
Sure.
In terms of light shed, do we have homeowners in the immediate areas of these locations that might have a problem with quote unquote light pollution? Or are they all pretty much rural areas without any structures near them?
Good question, Ralph. They're all pretty remote. I mean, there are buildings around, but they're a couple hundred feet away at least. The one that I think might have the most impact, at least for a more dense area, would be the one at Old Fairgrounds on Route 17. However, on either side of that road, the Old Fairgrounds, there are streetlights already in place. This one really is becoming more necessary because of the crosswalk that's there, and the fact that that intersection isn't lit, but does have a fair amount of traffic. So I don't think that's going to be a big concern, but you're absolutely right that we should be coordinating and making everybody aware that these will be going in. And much like the ones that were replaced, the light is actually a fairly clean light, and it's very clear cut. It's not a floodlight. These are pretty well directed down lights. So even though we have these lights going in, they're not going to broadcast 200 yards off in all directions. It's a fairly focused beam. So point taken, and I'll make sure we coordinate with anybody that might have a concern, and certainly respond to any concerns that come up.
Thank you.
I have a question. Which is the Gordon Road near the Loose Road?
Gordon Road is basically 135 north. So you go past the crest of the hill there, and you head down towards Manchester, and it's the road that's right there on the left, the 135 heading north.
Okay, across
So
from the Carlton Pond Preserve area.
Exactly right.
Oh,
Yep.
That's a great intersection. I'm very pleased with the choices. I'm pleased that we're doing it now. I've been an advocate for this, so I would be happy to make a motion to direct the town manager to proceed with the for street light installations as presented.
Second.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? The only discussion I would have is I know you mentioned adding streetlights perhaps in subsequent years. We can also evaluate and subtract some too. I would always try to bear that in mind. I'm a little less of a proponent of overlighting, but I do understand the safety concerns. So let's go ahead and take a roll call. Dennis Price, please.
Yes.
Ralph Eno.
Yes.
Catherine Woodson.
Yes.
Bruce Burgoyne is a yes. We'll move on to the fiber to the home network discussion of investigating the broadband internet project. And really what I think this group gets down to is whether or not at the March at the March 9th election, which is a state Senate special election, whether we want to have a non-binding question or questions on the ballot. There were a couple of different wording options put out there. This isn't a choice between these two, but what we might decide tonight would be if we want to do this and perhaps talk about the approach and refining the wording. We would want to do this quickly if we were going to do this. Is there any comment up front? I mean, I'm prepared to talk about it a little bit. Go ahead, Catherine.
Well, first off, I know all emails are public, so that's fine. But I wasn't writing those with the mind of like, oh, we were all going to read these and discuss them. So I thought them through well enough for that. I did like the suggestion that was posted after that. I don't know if that was formed from the ones I had suggested. I'm just trying to get down to that. I don't know who wrote that, but I liked
I wrote it. I wrote it.
Okay. I think that's much more succinct. I think with having gotten, I think I looked on the survey results above, was it 260 or 230 something?
Just about that, yeah. 250 something. Yep.
Yeah, but it was a lot of people have so far responded to the survey. There's a great need for internet. It's about a 50-50, it looks like, from those 200 people, almost 300, for how satisfied they are with what they currently have. I think this is a great way to get another pulse on the issue so that we know what to do for the town warrant. I think it'll give us a lot of input. And I understand it's non-binding. I think that's all we had ever talked about, just getting a straw poll to give us direction. And I thought the idea of reforming a broadband committee was perfect to get several different people's take on this as we're moving forward.
Okay, I'll be happy to respond to that. I did write the vote for one choice only option that you saw. And it certainly wasn't something I was going to recommend because I do not think we should be doing this on the June 2021 ballot. I've thought long and very hard about this, and this project is something that I would like to see the town move in the direction of throughout, and increasingly I have been concerned that we do not have enough public input. And by public input, I don't mean just polling and doing a straw poll or things of that nature. I mean real, true interaction and buy-in from the public, and our ability to sell it to the public, if you will, its value, I think is very limited under these current restrictions that we have, meeting in the manner that we do, which is of course ironic because we're meeting this way because we need to. So I know there's a lot of irony there. However, I just do not personally feel that we should be moving forward on the June ballot. And so to me, that makes me want to step back and not put out a what if at this point. Because I think we're too distant, if you will, from the 2022 ballot, which is where I think it would be more appropriate to be making this kind of proposal. And finally, in closing on this, I also think this is not a good time to put this in front of voters because of the budgetary impact. And I know we're talking about different ways that this may be formulated to be budgeted. However, I just cannot see putting a $4 million plus bond on the ballot in June in good faith as people who may have been underemployed or not employed for certain parts of the coronavirus period in the last year, that they have an economic impact. And this may make them less conducive to supporting us. I want to make sure it's successful. Well, other board members, please.
I concur. I've thought about this a lot too. I feel like I want to avoid this situation, and this is the situation I want us to avoid. Going so fast that it seems like what the select board is saying is, we all know what's best for you. You just have to trust us. And even though it's going to cost a lot of money, we know what's best because this is the fastest internet you can get. And I know that. We all know that. We've seen the presentations. But I don't want this to be something that comes as a force from the select board because we feel like it would be the best. I do feel like we have to have more discussion. When I saw on the question where it was like immediately start, it's like, I don't want to immediately start any of this. And that's just how I feel. I also feel like there is a little bit of like sort of borrowing fatigue. We're in the process of fitting the library and stuff. I want this to succeed, but I also feel like we have to have more conversation because all of a sudden it's like, hey, we're going to start a utility. And that seems like no matter how many advisors from Casco Bay we have or how many, it's going to take an enormous amount of education if we're going to get everyone to buy in, which is the crux of the entire system, getting people to buy in. And just because it's faster doesn't necessarily mean that everyone's going to buy in. And so I'm hoping that all of this goodwill we can sort of hold on to and collect a little bit as we move further down the road. And that's my 2 cents.
I guess I would add to that putting the question on the ballot in March, my concern is that we're raising, first of all, I don't think it will be the kind of straw poll result that we want, not in terms of what it says, but in timing and in terms of what we may develop. So I don't think even, I wrote the questions, but I don't think they're well developed, to be honest with you. Ralph, you have your hand up or you're just resting your elbow?
I think I kind of got it up here. I don't want to take up too much time on this thing. But yeah, I don't think this should be a fast track issue. To my mind, I don't think we have a representative sampling. And what I looked at from the data we have so far, it looks like most of the people replying either were mostly pleased or somewhat pleased. So I think there's at least 50% of the sampling says they're happy with the status quo. At least that was my read of the data. And the other thing we do not have yet, in addition to how we would structure this if we go forward, is we don't have context how this fits into our overall capital spending plan and what all of those things on our wish list what they will do in terms of an impact on the mill rate and where those impacts will kick in. And I think that's an integral part of any decision we make as to whether or not to proceed, because this is a big number for a small town. And we should know what we may have to give up, what we may have to push down the road, and we should have, at least as best you can do these things, we should have some idea of what the mill rate impact will be over at least a 5 to 10 year period, while that debt service is being paid down and while new debt service might be coming in. So we need that component as well. I think context is very, very important here. This is not a standalone item.
May I
Other comments or questions? Please do. Yes.
Well, several things. I think the only way to start getting public feedback is to ask the question. So I think by not asking it, you're limiting the feedback. So I absolutely disagree on that. By asking if we want to pursue it, that doesn't mean that we're going to actually do it. And it means that would give us a whole year to work on developing it. Or maybe not. Maybe it would be developed quicker. I think all the answers to the questions that Ralph raised are in the Casco Bay worksheet. We just have to decide how we want to do it. This could have a 0 mill rate impact if it's paid back just with user fees. I know Dennis is disagreeing, but that's one of the options. I think we ought to put it out there and let the people tell us if they think it's a good idea. And if you get a lot of people who say yes, then that's giving us some information rather than the 4 of us making a decision like this. On a different aspect from this, or a different place, as a public school teacher, I will tell you that the number one thing holding children back right now is being unmotivated. And a big part of not being motivated is a frustration with their internet signal. Probably 50% of my students don't have stable internet, and they live in a community where they are putting in a new fiber to the home network in many of their communities. Some of them are not going to receive it. It's a huge disparity problem. We are not giving children equal education for those who have reliable, stable internet and those who don't. I don't think it's just the responsibility of our town. I wish a different level of government was approaching this in a more quick manner. But I think we ought to let the people tell us what their opinion is. So if we don't do this, I mean, we can word it differently if we want, but I think we really ought to get more feedback if it's possible. I absolutely agree with you guys wanting more feedback. So I think this is a good way to start that.
Yeah, Catherine, absolutely empathize with everything you're saying, especially about education. In terms of feedback, again, I agree. We want to seek feedback, but I don't know if between now and when we would have absentee ballots, if you will, because we would want to ask whoever is voting, and it may be special elections aren't necessarily a heavy turnout election. This one may be, I don't know. But in any case, I'm not sure we have the right questions. And so I think we're still envisioning the project. And what I don't want to do is get us to the point, and I'm not even sure the Casco Bay advisor mixes of how they would take a look at the bond or propose it are the right way to go about it for our town. So I'm not sure I have the right question even to ask. I will tell you, when I first got into this, my whole goal was that we would build a fiber to the home network that would be paid back by subscriber fees only. And the town, if you will, the taxing authority, would only be the conduit to the management of it. When I saw the rates that we would have to charge if it was without tax support, I'm not sure if that's competitive enough to get the take rate. The take rate, to any public listening, is the amount of subscribers you would get to warrant doing this. And I'm a little bit concerned with what I've seen back in feedback so far, is what a couple people I think pointed out, is that there's a fair amount of satisfaction, and it's certainly not universal and it's certainly not fair, but there's a certain amount of satisfaction with current cable internet structure. And while that's, like I said, not fair or whatever, it doesn't allow us to build the better vision of why you would want to upgrade to this necessarily. And I think that's going to take some time. Now, maybe we do put a straw question on the June ballot, because we'll have a better picture and more time by then. I'm not sure we will, but maybe we will. I just don't think March is the time for it. I don't like having the last word, so somebody else could speak up.
I think we've all said what we think, so
Okay.
let's just make a decision.
Okay. Does anybody have a motion that they want to put on the floor in regards to this? Or we can just simply agree that we're not going to put something on the March ballot, that we're not going to direct anything in that direction. And it sounds, yes, go ahead, Ralph, please.
If the consensus is that we should hold off on a March ballot question, I think we have to commit to definitively doing something in June. I see March as an opportunity to enhance the feedback level, but as you say, Bruce, I'm just not sure that we know how to present the issue in a fashion that will get us to a point where we can make a decent decision. So as long as there's a commitment to doing it no later than June, I would like to hold off. And again, I think the participation rate in June will be greater. I'm not sure how much interest there's going to be in a special election to fill a Senate seat.
I concur with Ralph.
And I think the other part of that too is, if you start getting, and I've done a little actual polling before, and if you start getting different sources that are hard to aggregate, you have your poll over here and you have this feedback group, and there's overlaps. It's kind of hard to figure where those overlaps are, and are you actually polling moving information, or are you polling a period in time, are you changing minds, and so forth. So there are some questions like that as well. So I'm kind of with Ralph and Dennis. I don't think we should pursue this.
I also think that at the end of the budget development process for the upcoming fiscal year, we will be doing some homework to see how this might fit in the overall context of capital planning as we go forward, which might make it easier for us to present better questions.
Yeah, and I would add to that, by the way, I don't think this precludes us from putting money in the budget for continued groundwork on this at all. We did spend some money. It's been a good investment, I think. So there's nothing we've done so far that we're throwing away. We're moving in a direction.
Yeah, and I'd be willing to do more research about questions, things like that. But I don't think we should do it for March. I think we should aim for June. I think Ralph is correct. We'll have more participation at that time. And then we can, from that, if we need to do something else in November, sort of think about that, I think that's how we move forward.
So is what I'm understanding is that we're looking at a straw poll for June.
I would agree to that. I would also add that is actually, that's going to be the universe of people that would actually, warrant a fund thing. So you're asking exactly the right audience at that point. The other thing is, if we develop the question in our budgetary process, or warrant building process, I should say, then it's our job to explain it in the hearings and so on and so forth. It will become, just because it's a straw poll, for example, like the beach, that was pretty straightforward to explain, but it becomes incumbent on us, I think, if we have anything, we put in that town warrant, and it is a question that we are obligated to research and explain.
So I have a motion I'd like to make.
Good.
That the select board move forward with a straw poll question or questions for the June town warrant, and that we reform the broadband committee immediately to pursue with the select board the internet situation in Readfield.
Okay, and is there a second on that?
Second.
Okay, so that's been moved and seconded. If members of the board have thoughts on the broadband makeup, and I think we have some people who have kind of indicated willingness to be involved, and then we would have probably a board member on it. If we could circulate that information to Eric individually, then we could have a discussion on it continuing at our very next meeting to say, well, this will be the makeup of that committee. Because I think, for example, we might want to make sure we have somebody who's from the education standpoint, somebody who's from a work at home kind of standpoint, and somebody who might be from a medical delivery services standpoint. I think those would be helpful to try to recruit and identify those kinds of individuals. So we have a motion on the floor. It's been seconded. Is there any discussion on that motion?
Bruce, if I could just make one quick statement.
Please do.
Catherine, thank you for bringing up the committee. I was going to suggest that as the next step as well. So thank you. I think that's going to be great to help with this outreach and building a community that wants to support this, because I think once people understand it, they will. The idea of doing this in June, I think, makes a lot of sense. We have the option of putting out that that mailing that we did last year, and that's a great place to explain this, put out more information, even some statistics if we wanted to go that far. But I think it's a great opportunity, and probably probably the best chance to do the best communication we can. So I think that all makes very good sense. And the one other thing I wanted to point out is the survey results. They're very interesting, but they do need to be looked at carefully. That question about satisfaction, it's hard to tell exactly what people took from that. I saw a lot of feedback that said people were very upset with the cost and the customer service that they're getting, but they're generally okay with the speeds of the internet service that they're getting from cable, not so from DSL necessarily. So even though that number shows a bit more of a split, it's hard to see exactly what they're responding to, and I think many may have been responding to the speeds, not necessarily the customer service, the cost, given other comments that we've gotten around that. So just like any survey result, you want to be mindful of how it was written, how it was interpreted, and we've got some great data. I'm really excited that we have 250 plus responses, so we're on the right track, and I just we're doing the right things in the right way, and I do hope we can put a little bit of money in to continue this development process and research, recognizing that we need that straw poll vote really to decide whether to commit anything significant. So that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Are we ready to vote? Okay, the motion's on the floor. Does anybody need the motion restated? Seeing no one. Dennis Price,
Yes.
Ralph Eno,
Yes.
Catherine Woodson.
Yes.
Bruce Burgoyne is a yes. Thank you. We'll move on to, and by the way, we had two workshops, one last month, which was on the fiber to the home network. And then the second workshop was just a few days ago on the Parks and Recreation. And so one of the things we're going to do tonight, and this is our next item of business, is 21070, was discuss the recent Parks and Recreation workshop and consider next steps in developing a 5-year plan. So we're not going to do a 5-year plan here, but what we wanted to do, the suggestion was to pull together the basically the members who would be of the parks, not Parks and Rec, but the overall recreation board, I guess is what you would call it. We had representatives from Trails Conservation and Parks and Rec, Recreation, excuse me. So, and to work and probably assign a select board member to work on the initial overview of developing a 5-year plan. And we've had some email and some input. And Eric, do you have your hand up?
I do. I'm trying to be better at jumping in here without jumping in. So we did skip one item. I'm trying to take over for Catherine here. I think this is fine to continue with, but we do have a question about. Yeah. I just wanted to point that out. That's all.
No.
You got me, Eric. I was ready.
Well, boy, I was going to try to slip that one right by you guys. Okay.
I'm happy finishing the parks one though.
Yeah.
And so are we looking to ask Eric to form the committee or to form what the committee would be?
Yeah, kind of what I think the outcome was at the Parks and Rec workshop is to just go ahead and what I had suggested was inviting the chairs of those 3 committees to meet with a select board member to go ahead and begin basically trying to tap out a vision and some raw elements, if you will, of a 5-year plan. I don't think, they're going to do that in just 2 seconds. There's some building blocks to be done here. And looking at it further, we still do have that overarching umbrella to have that committee put together. And that has some outlining to it and so forth. As a matter of fact, I believe it is in your packet, the purpose and authority. And I would just simply say it doesn't really matter to me in terms of whether it's working with those chairs or working with their representatives. It's for the select board to just say tonight, let's get this kicked off and ask if there's a select board member who would like to work with that group so we can begin to move it forward.
I think this is a great idea. I do like the idea of adding I think it's great to use the chairs and ask them to meet initially, and then if they want to draw something up, I liked the discussion that was had around them maybe meeting quarterly. Just that would be a small group, 3 to 5 people, plus the town manager. It's not to put added duties on them so much as for those people to be able to talk together and pull things together as a larger group when needed. I think the rec board does have things that they have ready to go. That was the message that I got from Sean Keegan. So I think you will see a pretty good stab at a 5-year plan from their perspective, especially around the beach discussion that we had. It seemed like they have a lot of ideas and a lot of people lined up to help make it happen, saving a lot of money. So I would say if we could get this going right away and get a report back to us by our next meeting, that would be awesome.
Yeah, and I think we're meeting twice this month. Is that correct, Eric?
Yeah, that's right.
So it may actually be a February meeting to give them time to meet. And I don't think we have to at this point designate this committee as official, because I hear what you're saying, Catherine, on meeting quarterly and that kind of organization. And I agree with that approach. But I would also let this group as they get together as part of their 5-year planning kind of talk about maybe that structure a little bit, because maybe we don't have it right. Maybe they would see it a little bit differently or a different angle or whatever. They're under the hood. We're looking at the car.
I think that's perfect.
Yeah.
But
So it's just a matter of it's a matter of just saying we want that to get going, and we'll just kick it off.
I do want them to be able to get numbers together before the CIP meeting from what they already have. Not that that's a final plan, but just, whatever they have as known knowledge that they can give now that will help us with that 5-year plan, which helps us with the fiber to the home thing and everything else. So.
When is CIP scheduled on that budget plan?
I think it was March.
I think it was March.
February 25th.
February 25th. So that would give them time to probably have a couple of discussion meetings at least. Okay.
Go
ahead, Eric. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, the rec board, as you've noted, really is energetic about this. They want to meet this week with me to get things going. So,
well, the rec board can continue meeting anytime they want.
Well, yeah. I mean, but with the 5-year planning process in mind and talking about priority projects and what their vision is, and so they're very eager to move on that 5-year plan piece. And I think you're right that they're going to be an anchor for that.
So did anybody want to do this, or did you? Was anybody thinking that this would be in their well?
Well, I'm already doing fiber to the home or internet and solid waste, so I'm not going to volunteer.
And I would be happy to, unless there's somebody else that would like to align with us, but I would be very happy to do this.
Well, then let's
do it.
do it.
Okay. Dennis, did you say I should do it, or did you say you should?
Bruce Burgoyne should do it.
Okay. I don't think we need any official authorization. I'll work with Eric to get the initial meeting kicked off with those chairs, and we'll see where that goes. And I have the sense of the board as to when you kind of want some reporting back, so I can pass that along. Now we'll move backwards in time to 21-069, which would be the last item on the agenda, and that's to consider any potential ordinance changes for the June town meeting. I have not reviewed ordinances as closely as I perhaps would like to. Again, perhaps COVID is the big distractant here, but we do want to make sure that if there are any ordinance changes for the June town meeting that we begin working on, or if we want to direct Eric to pull up anything or or if there's items we want in future discussions at board meetings on particular ordinances, that we do that. We would expect probably there would be something from the planning board.
I don't see anything in looking at our ongoing select board goals that we
Yeah.
had specified for this year. There is one thing, though, that you had told us in our planning meeting that you would do for us before you are done, or before,
Yes.
which is not an ordinance, but to revise the select board governance policies, operating policies, whatever.
So, yes, and I'm happy to say that I have sold my business and therefore will be freer to do that. So I will be working on that. I'm scheduling some time to do it.
Wow.
I'd
Well, I
like to
hope
point
those are
out. Oh,
good
sorry.
decisions. Go. Sorry, Dennis.
No worries. There are two ordinances that I wanted to just maybe bring up. I know we're at 4 minutes. Number one is our general assistance one. It's the oldest one, but it's I think it's a boilerplate state thing. But my only question is, it hasn't changed in 15 years, now 16 years, over how many ever, legislatures or whatever. That was one that I saw. It was the oldest one. I clicked on it. The other one is it's the property tax relief that we passed, I think, in 2018. There are 4 criteria now that seem pretty good. I don't know if changing the ordinance, if it's a changing the ordinance situation, or if it's just marketing the program more. But I just thought maybe that was something that we had kicked around and was on my mind.
Let's reread that ordinance and put it on discussion on a upcoming board meeting, because obviously we have that ordinance on the book, and we're not getting the uptake we would like to see. Maybe we will this year, who knows? But we should have a discussion, I think, on that, because there's actually money associated with that as well. And if those funds are just going to sit there forever and not be utilized, that's not what we want to do with funds. The general assistance is boilerplate, isn't that right, Eric? And we just update from the state the amounts every year?
Yeah, so that's absolutely right, and that was the point I was going to make, is that the core of the ordinance on how general assistance is administered and what the policies are or the requirements are, that's all the same, and that really hasn't changed any. But that's in large part okay, because we update the appendices every year, every October or November, and that's when we change the amount of money that the state says we can have available, or the thresholds and things like that. In some respects, it doesn't matter a lot, because we end up giving assistance through other means most of the time anyway. The state criteria are so low, I guess. Your income has to be so low that 90% of the people that apply for assistance aren't eligible, and we end up giving other assistance anyway. So it matters in that respect. We can give additional support for the people that are the most in need. But we're hamstrung a little bit by the state requirements of that. And there are some ways to potentially do more, but it would require things like doing our own housing inventory assessment for rental costs and things like that. So larger towns might have more ability to tweak that ordinance more and to be more proactive, but I don't see us having that capacity at this point, unfortunately.
I think
So go ahead, please, Catherine.
the only thing that we could do would be to fund more money into other assistance avenues to help people more. And then that becomes a budgetary thing more than an ordinance thing. Am I right?
Yeah, that's the way I look at it. And right now, actually, the funding we have available coming in from bottles and from donations has been enough. This year is going to be a test. It's been a hard one already. And I think we'll see a lot this spring. We'll know what the impacts were, because the big costs and the big things people are applying for is heating assistance and electricity, but heating is the big one.
Great. Thank you very much. So we will put the
We
property.
haven't been oversubscribed in any given year in our recent past history, correct?
We have not, and I don't expect we will be this year, but it'll put a bigger dent than we usually see. And I'll just be curious, come June to see whether revenues exceeded expenses, because we do have that carry forward. So that's the one question I would have.
Is
Great.
it heating assistance you're talking about?
For I'll just say assistance overall, right?
Okay.
But really our local assistance funds, we would have to have 10% of the population applying for general assistance to actually deplete the general assistance fund that we have, as modest as it is, because the eligibility is so, like I said, it's so terribly hard to get, and that's something the state has control over, not the town of Readfield.
Okay, great. So we will review the property tax relief ordinance. So just pull that out and read it sometime, please, folks. Can I take a motion to adjourn, please?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. Dennis,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Catherine,
Yes.
and Bruce is a yes. Thank you all for participating tonight in some good discussion. Thanks.